The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. What do you suppose is the furthest extent of the possibilities for us to heal ourselves from the major illnesses that can attack us in our lives? More directly, if we contain part of the light of God, if that spark of the eternal dwells within us, then can we turn that eternal energy toward healing our own mortal body as well? There's a line from a wonderful poem by Derek Walcott titled Love After Love that reflects the remarkable healing experience of today's guest, and I'd like to quote that line. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome. And then it goes on a little later, you will love again the stranger who was yourself. Our guest today is the Reverend Matthew T. McDonald, an ordained Christian minister of 17 years. Over this past year, he says he's become aware of larger cosmic truths as he's explored spiritualism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and different forms of spiritual healing. And then, as a complete surprise, came his miraculous healing from the complications of Lyme disease. Matthew, welcome to NDE Radio.
Thank you so much, Lee. It's really a joy to be with you and all the listeners today.
Well, Matthew, you started out as an evangelical preacher and pastor of a conservative-leaning Christian congregation. So what led you to explore these alternative spiritual paths?
Well, like many people who are on spiritual journeys, it was not something that came overnight, right? My journey has been one of a path. And so as you pointed out, I did come from a conservative background in the Christian church. And it all started out, and we've had discussions about this, on the concept of hell and the afterlife, and really kind of eliminating that belief from my life. And many others are awakening to this as well, that there's not some God who wants to throw you into eternal fire after you suffer here. And so it really began with that reality opening to my mind and heart. And once you kind of get rid of, get the hell out, as I say,
right.
That just became a door and a gateway to exploring other truths and realities. So jokingly, I tell people, that's when I got the left-handed fellowship or the left-footed fellowship from a number of my Christian friends.
Yeah. Yes.
Hell is important to them, but it's not important to me anymore. So it started there.
Of course, a lot of these alternative religions have their own versions of hell.
Yeah. Yes. But I think this is where I find, hell is a condition. I've traveled like you. I've traveled to the Holy Land, to Israel and to Palestine, and it took me being there. Jesus never used the word hell ever, because it's a German word that came from the 1500s. He used this word Gehenna. He used the word Gehenna. Gehenna means, and that was where they burned the trash and the rubbish in the first century Jerusalem.
Right, but behind the Temple Mount.
Behind the Temple Mount. And so when Jesus talked about, experiencing hell, it was really, our choices or maybe the influence of others, and then we have to end up there. But sometimes we experience in this plane of existence what feels like burning, a burning pile of rubbish. And so he's not talking about something that happens in the afterlife, I don't think. He was talking about on this earth plane, in this time. Our unhealthy choices can lead us to hellish conditions. And we know
And some who've experienced near-death experience can create their own intermediate purgatorial type of hell, isolation and cut off from the love of God situations that they come back and report.
And certainly that's something that, that I've heard you speak about. And But I think in the long term, whatever the long term is, eternity, the afterlife, whatever, there is no place where people are being tortured in hell and a devil with a pitchfork. I just think that it's not in nature with love. The ultimate reality is love. And,
right.
And the Christian tradition says that God is love, and other traditions say that God is love. So,
absolutely. I think that's when you get down to the basics. That's what everyone can agree on. We differ on all the practices, but I think God is a God of love. It's pretty universal. Well, Maddie, tell the audience a little about what happened to you.
Well, maybe I'll give some larger context. Tell the
okay.
Story. And so out of this exploration of kind of ridding myself of hell came ridding myself of other things, as that normally happens. But very interestingly, a couple of years ago, I like many people, I did my ancestry, through Ancestry.com, and I'm not plugging them, but that's the ones I used. And I found out through this that my mother's family in both in Scotland and in Canada had worshipped as spiritualists. Not Christians, they were spiritualists. Although they did attend church on Sunday morning, Monday through Saturday night, they were spiritualists. But there was no spiritualist church. They would do the seances and the different practices in their homes. And so that sparked my interest a couple of years ago. And so I began to explore spiritualism. And what's interesting, we live in the state of Maine. Spiritualism really finds its hub here in the state of Maine. The first president of spiritualism was a chap called Harrison D. Barrett, and he was from central Maine. And it was very there was lots of influence in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And so I began to explore the principles of spiritualism. And the first bit of spiritualism says, we believe in infinite intelligence. And I love that. That I think that works well on a lot of different planes. And, we can, like you were saying earlier, we can have different expressions, but in the one hand, we all can say, we do, whether we call it spirit or universe or God or love or dharma or karma.
Or consciousness.
Consciousness.
Yeah.
There's something that's intelligent behind it. This is not a random act of gravity. It's the universe at work and through us. So, and the seventh principle of spiritualism says that it's the moral responsibility of the individual to create their own happiness or unhappiness. And I just fell in love with that because it is as we live and as we practice and as we love and as we learn and expand our consciousness, it really is up to us. We in a very real way are the authors and the co-authors of our own happiness or unhappiness, for that matter. We wake up in the morning and we say, "Oh, I had a terrible night. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and it's going to be a crap day." Well, I guess that's that happens. And then we say that, and then we have the crappy day. We wonder why we have.
Exactly.
We author our own crappy days.
Yeah, we set ourselves up for it.
And so out of this exploration of spiritualism, I ran into some friends who have been practicing Buddhism many years, and the practice of mindfulness and kind of being able to let go of all sorts of things. Identity. This is one of the principles of Buddhism, of course, is suffering comes from attachment, right? So we learn not to attach to our identities, right? This, you ask someone who they are, and they'll say, "Well, I'm a lawyer, or I'm a father, I'm a mother, but that's what you do. But really, who are you? And get caught up our egos love the traps of identity, right? And so. And even recently, kind of looking through some of the Buddhist texts, in the Hindu text and spiritual healing, I just spent the whole last year exploring all these wonderful truths that are universal, I think, to humanity and maybe probably all of creation, all of the universe. And so a number of years ago, I woke up one day and I wasn't able to use my hand correctly, my right hand, and out of that came a diagnosis of Lyme disease, which of course now is very common in the Northeast, and but mine was early on, and it took a while to diagnose it, but by the time that it was properly diagnosed, it had been in my system for too long. Now if you catch it early, they do a lot of aggressive treatment with antibiotics, and normally that takes care of it. But I was outside of that window. It was probably in my system for at least 6 months to a year, and so it had already begun to do some damage, and so progressed into multiple situations with pericarditis that had gone into my heart. For those who know, my heart got too big because Lyme disease deals with inflammation, right? It gets into your joints and elbows and wrists and feet and knees. Mine had become it's so inflamed, but it had gotten into my heart. And so I thought one time I was having a heart attack, and I got to the hospital and they did all the tests, and they showed my heart was too big. It was swollen with inflammation due to Lyme disease. And I had this experience 3 or 4 times, ending up in the hospital for multiple days, making sure trying to control the swelling around my heart. And of course the joke is they would say, Matt, you have a big heart, and I said, of course I have a big heart. and come to find out, when it's your physical heart, and it's too big, it's not healthy. But then it made its way to my brain, right? I was having issues with memory loss, not being able to remember, just 24 hours before what I had for dinner, or my memories were blurry. Time was blurry, and it was because it had gotten into my brain.
And you're a young guy. You're too young for this sort of thing.
Yes.
Usually age related.
Yes, and it was, and I even saw I had I even saw a dementia and Alzheimer's specialist in here in the Bangor area, and so that was the condition that I found myself in, but all the while I'm having this kind of awakening to consciousness, and kind of walking away from previous identity, walking away from, and of course, people get all sorts of rallied up when you walk away from who they think you are.
Yes.
So I'm learning, and I'm kind of I take on a new diet. I eliminated sugar from my life. I don't have sugar anymore.
Very good move.
And I every person that I encounter who tells me about Lyme, I said, consider take Lyme out of take sugar out of your life. And of course, the first response is, I can't do that. And I say, of course you can't, because you don't think you can. Change the way you think. So not too long ago, in December, for the first time in quite a while, I started to have. Well, we had a bit of snow here in Maine, and I had to go out and shovel, or snow blow, and which of course is, and it's good exercise. But I was out snow blowing, and I started to have chest pain, and I hadn't had chest pain in quite a while, actually, a number of months. And so I went to my doctor, and they said, yes, you have a bout of pericarditis again. Your heart is swollen. The heart sac is swollen. And they put, one of the things that they did for me was I had to go on bed rest. And I've talked to you about this before. It's 3-4 a week in bed. The longest I was in bed for 2 weeks. Trying to, you can't have any stress on the heart to take medicine and just really be in bed for a couple of weeks. And so this last time in December, it was the second week of December. I think the 15th of December or the 14th of December, or that week. So on Monday, they give me the diagnosis. You have to go back to bed. And of course, and you know this as a minister, Christmas time is the busiest time of the year for me.
Yes.
I don't, and for all of us, I simply do not have time to be in bed during the Christmas season.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not have the strength to do anything else. My heart was hurting. So I spent, that was on a Tuesday. I spent 24 hours listening to Wayne Dyer, Dr. Dyer, who was one of my spiritual heroes, just talk about visualization and healing. So I spent a whole day listening to Dr. Dyer talking about manifesting healing, and he talked about John of God, his healing, Wayne Dyer's personal healing with John of God, and I had never heard of John of God. And then the next day, a friend of mine who was now in Florida, she phoned me and talked to me about John of God. And now this is not coincidence, you know. And so I really just spent about 24 hours doing nothing more than visualizing healing, feeling what it would be like to have a fully functioning system, a normal functioning system without pain or inflammation. And so on Thursday of that week, I get a phone. I phoned my son's school, and they said, "Oh, we can't wait to see you at his concert tonight in Castine." And my first thought was, "What concert?" I guess I forgot to write that down. Well, actually, in fact, I thought it was the next week. And I literally came to. So I did not have the energy to make a cup of tea, much less drive the hour or so to where James would have his concert. But I made this decision. I said, you know, I don't care if it kills me. I'm going to take this drive and hear my son sing. So I drove to Castine, where his school is, and I was about 20. And I was a little early. I got stuck in someone's driveway. I'm not going to mention whose, but it was icy and there was snow. But anyway.
It was, by the way, my driveway, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And so I get to about 20 minutes early to the concert, and as you know, the layout of Castine, where they perform is I just drove to the public dock by the ocean, and whenever I'm by the ocean, I always try to just fill my lungs full of ocean air. I think it's very healing. Mm-hmm. So I'm listening to Wayne Dyer on podcast as I'm driving to Castine, as I'm driving to hear my son sing, as I'm getting out of your icy driveway, and I get to the public dock there in Castine, and the most marvelous, unexpected thing happens. I get out of my car. It is very cold that night. It was not above 10 degrees, and the wind is blowing because it's right there on the ocean. And I take 2 steps out of my car, and I step out of my body. But I turn around, and I'm looking at myself, my physical body. But I'm not. I'm only aware of spirit. I'm only aware of my my soul, my spirit body, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. The thing that I normally function in, I was not aware of. And the first thought I have in the spirit realm is I look at myself and I say, is that what my face really looks like? And then I take 2 steps back to myself, and I took my hand and I reached into my chest and I grabbed my heart and I said to my body, there. Everything will be better. Everything is fine now. And I kissed myself on the forehead. And for those who know me, the people I'm intimate with, that's one way I show love. I kiss people on the forehead. My son, my mother, father, my relatives, the people I'm intimate with. That's one of the ways. And by the time my cognitive kicked in, it was over. And I was back. And inside my physical body. So I drove just around the corner to my son's concert, and with every song that they sang, every music that they played, I was feeling stronger, and I could feel healing into my body. I drove home. With every mile, I felt like I felt life and healing flow into my body. Since that day, I've not had an ounce of pain or discomfort. I went into my PCP. I told her, she did a check, and she said, Matt, as far as I can tell, I hear no swelling. I see, I don't hear any fluid, and I have an appointment coming up with my cardiologist just to confirm. I've had no joint pain. I've had no headache, no swelling, no feet pain, no finger pain. And in fact, every area of my life has just been significantly better since.
Wow,
and,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and so, and I don't have all, and people have asked me, like, what do you think? Can you explain? I don't know that I can fully explain outside of, sometimes the mechanic has to work on his own car, or the carpenter has to work on his own roof.
Right.
There is a part of us that is eternal, whether we call it soul or consciousness or essence. Eckhart Tolle calls it essence. There's a part of us that exists outside of us and will continue. After our fleshly body decides not to work anymore, we definitely continue. And I'm beginning to think that we had a life before. I think on some level, since the beginning of, maybe we call the Big Bang or time, whatever we are now probably existed before and will exist again. Some call that reincarnation or past life experiences. I'm just now dabbling into that. I don't claim to be any sort of expert other than I don't think this is the end, and I don't think that this was the beginning.
No.
And so, this is where I am. And so I'm beginning to see, and we've had this, I've always had a gift of healing. This is something I've, within my traditional Christian framework, I've always had, prayers of healing and with oil and seen tremendous healing. And so that's always been a part of my experience. And so now maybe to take it even to a different level, to heal through spirit and to heal through in the spirit realm.
Right. Well, I was thinking, when you told me this, there are people that practice leaving their bodies, that they actually train and meditate to learn how to do that. And but I've never heard of someone from that point of leaving your body, either turning to yourself and healing your own body or going off and healing somebody else. Edgar Cayce did this, but he didn't talk about his I don't think he talked about an out of body experience as being related to that healing. But maybe this is something that people could learn how to do. Oh yes,
if I can do it, anyone can do it. I suspect. I don't think it's limited to a person or to. I think we, as we awaken to consciousness, as we awaken to our divinity, as we awaken to spirit, as we awaken to healing and our place in the universe, it's available to anyone, and can be experienced by anyone. But it does, there are things that we have to do. It doesn't come from, I do think there's a part to play. We do have to quiet our minds. Meditation is important, and writing and being open to these experiences. I think the society that we're living in right now just drives us away from these things. So it takes a bit of unplugging, and take 10 minutes a day away from our social media. Get off, Facebook for a day, and you'll have this marvelous experience. So, or whatever. Just don't allow the politics of the day, to interrupt your peace. It's so easy.
The stress that's spread through our whole culture right now is intense, and I'm sure we're going to see cancer rates and heart disease go up as a result of it.
Anxiety, right? When we take these higher perspectives, it really does bring peace and joy to know that, from a higher perspective, things are working out. From a higher perspective, we're not, Rhonda, who is one of my spiritual teachers, talks about the bridge. Where, when we stand on a bridge and we look down, and the river is our emotions, right, and our feelings, and we can have all sorts of emotions and feelings, but through meditation and spiritual practice, we can stand on a bridge and look down and watch them. You can observe them and even kind of get splashed a little bit by them, but we don't have to be caught up in all of it, And I think that's the key to kind of having a healthy spiritual journey in the time we're living in. So,
have you shared this story with your congregation?
Not everyone. Not everyone. Because but it is. I am sharing it more and more because it is. I'm finding more and more people are open to these conversations, and so I've found a home among in one way I found a family and a home among the spiritualist community in Maine, which is vibrant and they are into healing and they're into spiritual exploration and all these beautiful things. And so to give a cheap plug to Temple Heights, if anyone wants to just explore Temple Heights Spiritual Camp, there's my cheap plug for them. And that has been just a beautiful platform for spiritual exploration for me personally. So
yeah, this past summer I spent some time at the Etna Spiritualist Camp with Raymond Moody, who was visiting there for a week lecturing, and he loved it. And to tell you the truth, I did too. Yes,
and spiritualism, of course, has like I was talking earlier, New England, especially Maine, has deep roots in the spiritualist movement. And they would have camp meetings in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where I go, at Temple Heights, right across the corner where the Methodists, and they come in together, the Methodists and the spiritualists would come up on the steamboats from New York City and Boston and come and they would dump 1,000 spiritualists off on one corner and 1,000 Methodists off on the other, and they would have camp meetings and the different teachers and spiritualist teachers of the day would come and they would travel all over the United States and the world for that matter to come to Maine to hear these people speak. And so I just, for me personally, it's been a marvelous experience with the spiritualists.
Why do you suppose that movement that was so intense and vibrant back then faded out? Was it attacks from traditional Christian religions? It was twofold. I think one was attacks from the traditional faith communities. The other was the war. World War II broke out. World War I and II broke out, and so that happened. But out of the war came a revival of spiritualism again in the 50s, and so I think that, and now I honestly believe that there is a revival. People are waking up, and people are walking away by the large percent from traditional religion, but they are open. The New York Times and the Post just ran this. Washington Post just ran this beautiful study on how astrology and people are turning to tarot cards and exorcism and all these traditions. All these things are not traditional. Right. Well, people are dropping out of the unsatisfying traditional ritual Christianity, and at the same time they need some spiritual comfort, and so they turn to this. Well, unfortunately, Matty, we're out of time.
Find me on Instagram. I'm going to do a quick plug to Instagram.
Absolutely.
Matthew, just find me at Matthew T. McDonald _ on Instagram, and if you want to connect with me on Instagram, I'm there.
Terrific.
And so thank you, Lee, and thank you to all the listeners. And I just find this whole topic very, very fascinating. So
great. Thank you, Matty. If for your listeners, if you'd like to listen to this show again or any of our past shows, just go to nderadio.org and click on the past shows button. For more information on IANDS, go to their website at IANDS.org. And join us again next Monday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, for more NDE Radio. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.